Hey there, parents. Have you ever prepared yourself for a meltdown or a tough conversation with your kiddo and they still completely pushed back anyway? You know, those times when you've explained the expectation, you've reminded them ahead of time, you've talked through the plan, totally prepared, and somehow it's still turned into arguing, yelling, and whining, and maybe even a full blown meltdown. Well, that's usually the moment that you think, why in the heck isn't this working? Well, it's because preparation alone doesn't change the behavior. It's the follow through that does. And today we're talking about one of the biggest parenting mistakes that families make after doing all the preparation work. Guess what it is? It's when you panic when the child still pushes back. Welcome to the No Problem Parenting Podcast, where parents learn how to lead with confidence, clarity, and steadiness, even when behavior feels exhausting or unpredictable. This month, inside of the nest, we're talking about one of the most overlooked parenting tools there is, in my mind anyway, and I believe it's preparation, not perfection, preparation. Because when parents prepare ahead of time, you stop getting pulled into the chaos as often. None of us are perfect. So, preparation doesn't mean that you're going to be controlling every moment. You're not going to be all calm and quiet and cool and collected. And it definitely doesn't mean that you're going to become rigid when things aren't working the way you planned. It means thinking ahead instead of constantly reacting in the moment or getting tugged into all the emotion. A lot of parenting stress comes from parents expecting that kids are just going to handle situations that they're actually not fully prepared for themselves. So everyone ends up getting frustrated when things fall apart. So, for example, let's say your child struggles every morning before school. Every single morning turns into reminders, rushing, frustration, yelling, and stress. Well, if you keep repeating the same pattern while hoping that the kiddo is going to suddenly handle it differently tomorrow, preparation asks a different question. How about instead we ask, what can I adjust before the problem starts? Maybe the backpack gets packed the night before. Maybe the clothes get laid out ahead of time. Maybe the screens get shut off earlier because bedtime has been too late. Maybe the kiddo needs a visual checklist instead of repeated verbal reminders. It's like, hey, buddy, go check your list. Are you ready? Preparation reduces pressure on the moment itself. And that matters because most children handle transitions better when expectations are predictable, not constantly changing the expectation, not constantly feeding the emotions and becoming emotional in the expectation, but instead predictable. And honestly, adults aren't much different. Most of us function better when we know what's coming. Well, children do too, especially kids who struggle with regulation, anxiety, attention, sensory overload, learning challenges, or emotional intensity. Preparation creates safety, and safety reduces chaos. However, a big mistake that we often make is waiting until the behavior escalates before becoming clear about our expectation. If the child's already melting down, if the siblings are already fighting, if the child is already refusing, parents try to create structure in the middle of that emotional intensity. Well, that's just hard on everyone. So preparation happens before the emotion takes over. And we're not just preparing for them to do the thing to make it easier, smoother for them to do the thing that we ask them to do or we ask them not to do. We're actually preparing for what happens when they don't. Prepare for the worst. Step 2 of No Problem Parenting means we are kind of planning and predicting the worst that could happen, quote unquote. Can't always be prepared. Life throws us curveballs. Our kids most certainly do. But there are those day in and day out challenges we know are going to happen. Even when we're prepared to follow through, our kiddos, some of our kiddos are just going to push and push, and they're going to tug our heartstrings, or they're going to say things that they just know they're going to get a rise out of us for. Preparing for the worst means preparing for those moments too, so that you can turn your shoulder to the side, let the daggers fly on by. You're not, quote unquote, phased by the words or the behaviors that are coming when you've asked your kiddo to do or not do something, right? So you're going to stay in leadership mode. You're going to be noticing. We talk a lot about that in lesson 3 of Change the Conversation with Kids. Notice the behavior, observe the behavior, don't get tied in to the behavior. So you might say something like, hey, kiddo, before we go into the store, here's what's expected. When homework is done, screens can turn on. When the timer goes off, electronics get plugged in. Your simple clear, predictable direction is going to matter. But here's something important that you really need to hear. Preparation itself does not change the behavior. Your follow through does. And this is where I want you to stop doubting yourself. I want you to prepare. I want you to explain. I want you to set the limit. And then I want you to be prepared for when the child still melts down. They still argue, they still push back. And instead of immediately thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't working, I want you to remember that pushback does not mean the strategy failed. In fact, sometimes pushback is the first sign that change is actually happening. Children often react bigger when parents begin leading differently. Why? Well, because kids are trying to figure out, is this really the new expectation? Will my parent actually follow through this time? Does the boundary stay even when I get upset? Honestly, many kids already know from experience that eventually you're going to give in. Eventually, you're going to start yelling. Eventually, you're going to over explain or negotiate with them. Or maybe you're going to drop the expectation altogether. So, when you become suddenly more clear, when you're steadier and you're more consistent, kids often increase their behavior at first. They're going to challenge that, they're going to test that. Not because your kiddo's bad, not because the strategy failed, but because your kiddo is testing whether your leadership is believable. And I think this is where many of us panic. Many parents will panic. They think this is getting worse. My kid's behavior is amping up. They're more upset than they were before. Maybe I should just let this go. Maybe I'm overreacting. But that's usually the exact moment that follow through matters the most. Because when you stay matter of fact and you follow through anyway, your kiddo's going to begin to learn something incredibly important. My parent can handle this. The expectation stays even when I'm upset, and my reactions don't control the whole house anymore. And honestly, this is one of the biggest shifts that parents experience in no problem parenting. When you stop fearing your child's reaction, when you stop believing that you have to fix every emotion your child experiences immediately, when you stop allowing pushback to control the direction of the day, because kids absolutely notice when parents become emotionally shaky. They notice when they catch you off guard, or they freak you out, or they make you question yourself. And they notice when you become steady. And that steadiness creates safety. So here's the encouraging part you need to understand. Most families only experience those really intense pushback moments a handful of times before the behavior starts shifting. Why? Well, because kids realize the old pattern isn't going to work anymore. The yelling doesn't change the answer. The meltdown doesn't remove the expectation, and the argument doesn't control the parent. And then life keeps moving forward. As we say in the Midwest, keep her moving. That's when home begins to feel calmer, more steady, more stable. Not because children suddenly love these boundaries, but because leadership becomes predictable. And parents often think that consistency means you're going to have to repeat yourself forever. But real consistency actually reduces conflict over time because kids stop wondering whether you mean what you say. And that's why follow through matters so much more than having the perfect words in the right moment. Kids trust leadership they can predict. And sometimes the most powerful parenting moment is staying steady while your child is temporarily unhappy. You're not going to get harsh. You don't have to get emotional. You don't have to get reactive. Just be very matter of fact. Hey, buddy, I hear you. This is hard. The expectation still stands. We're still moving forward. That's the moment children begin learning resilience, emotional regulation, frustration tolerance, and respect for boundaries. So when you can do this consistently at home, things get better at school. And honestly, it's also the moment many parents finally begin to feel confident again too. You got to ride out a couple of those really tough moments and follow through. Set your limit, set the direction, set your boundary, and then stop talking. Preparation helps you to stop talking, over talking, because many of us repeat ourselves over and over and over when expectations haven't been made clear ahead of time. And then we all get frustrated. Sometimes we're actually upset at our kid when it's really our fault because we didn't set a clear guideline. And if we haven't always followed through on that guideline, The kiddo's like, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't this time. But when we change that rule, when we change our follow through and we actually do follow through, of course our kids are going to push back sometimes. But when your kiddo pushes back, you don't have to get frustrated about it. You can have prepared for it. It's going to be okay. You're going to ride out their emotion. Preparation allows us to say less because the structure's already in place, and kids respond better to that. Clear, simple, and predictable. That's leadership. And honestly, this approach helps parents feel less exhausted too, because emotionally reacting is draining. It just wipes us out. Constant negotiating is draining. Feeling caught off guard all day is draining. But preparation creates more steadiness for parents too. Not perfection, just more steadiness. It doesn't always look pretty. That's why I don't use the word calm a lot, like, oh, just calm down, parents. No, it's not always pretty. We're going to get intense. We're going to be feeling all the feels. We're going to be sometimes a little caught off guard or freaked out. It's okay. Just continue to tell yourself to pause and then stay steady, observe and notice what's happening versus getting caught up into it. And that's what kids need most, your steadiness. So in the next episode, we're going to talk about how to plan ahead for the exact moments that usually turn into battles at home, and how small changes before those moments can completely change the direction of the interaction. And if this episode resonates, this is exactly what we work on inside the Nest. It's our monthly group coaching program where parents can practice practical leadership tools that reduce chaos and build more confidence at home. You can learn more about all our programs and services by going to noproblemparents.com. And if you're in the middle of this right now, if you've started setting clearer expectations and suddenly your child seems even more upset or resistant, don't panic. That doesn't automatically mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it means your child is noticing your leadership shift. So stay steady, stay matter of fact, and remember, children often push hardest right before they start believing the boundary is real. You don't need to win the emotion. You do not need to overpower your child. You just need to stay believable. And then over time, predictable leadership creates emotional safety. And emotional safety changes families. Hey, parents, if this episode shifted how you see your child's behavior or yourself, take the next step. You'll find practical tools and support at noproblemparents.com to help you lead with clarity and confidence. Less reacting, more leadership. That's No Problem Parenting.